Hello, everyone. The piano music you just heard is your signal to settle into your seats and prepare for the start of our worship service. Before we begin, I have a quick announcement. We have Valentine's Day supplies at the back to make cards for family and friends, and also displaced immigrants supported at Casa Marianella in Austin. Suggested messages are available on the table. Additional announcements can be found in your little leaflet that was passed out as you came in, and I highly recommend that you check those out, and also you can always reference our website. Let us now begin. So, good morning and welcome to San Gabriel Unitarian Universalist Fellowship. Whether you are here in the sanctuary or watching from home, hi everybody watching from home. We are so glad that you're here today. My name is Kelly McGinty and I have been a UU here at San Gabriel since about 2017. I've served in many capacities during that time, including helping with the board and also on the hospitality team. So that was a lot of fun. We're still looking for members who are interested in serving in that capacity. If you have any questions about that, please see me or Carolyn after the service today. Today, I am happy to introduce our guest speaker, Eric Hepburn. Eric has so graciously gifted us with his presence before. Their pronouns are, well, his pronouns are he and him. He is a friend of San Gabriel and a community lay minister from Austin. So welcome and thank you for being with us again today. San Gabriel is a member congregation of the Unitarian Universalist Association. There are over 1,000 UU congregations in the United States. All of us together are working for a just, peaceful, and sustainable world. Sustaining each other in community is the first step down the long road of that very important work. We especially welcome any guests today. If this is your first time here, thank you so much for coming. We hope you will stay after the service for some coffee and conversation. Members, please do look for the visitor tags and extend a hearty welcome. And if you would like to know more about us and learn about upcoming events, please fill out the visitor's cards in the seat back pocket in front of you and sign up for our newsletter. Please know that whoever you are, wherever you are from, whomever you love, wherever you are on life's journey, you are welcome here. Let us greet this day in song. Our opening hymn is If I Had a Hammer. Lyrics will be projected behind me. Please rise in body or spirit as you are able.
As we light our chalice, we create sacred space together. I call you into this time of connection. Sorry, I'm double mic'd today, so I didn't have the requisite level of self-awareness to stop the mics from talking to each other.
I thought it was an alien invasion.
No, that's later in the sermon. That's a little bit. We're going to get to alien invasions, but I promise. If I had a hammer, everything would look like a nail. That's it.
I am not double mic'd. As we light the chalice, we create sacred space together. I call you into this time of connection with words playfully derived from the hymn we just sang. If I had a hammer, everything would look like a nail. Our affirmation is an expression of our covenant with one another. Please read after me, and the words will be projected on the screen. The doctrine of this church is love.
We are here to love.
The quest of truth is its sacrament.
We are here to learn.
Service is its prayer.
We are here to care for others.
To dwell together in peace.
We are here to live in peace.
To seek knowledge in freedom.
We are here to honor our differences.
To serve humanity in fellowship.
We are all connected in spirit.
To the end that all souls shall grow in harmony with the divine. Thus do we covenant with each other. And now it is time for our Wonder Box, and I believe Karina is here to share it with us.
We use love to help each other learn and grow. And so when we share and shout out our guesses as to what might be in the Wonder Box today, we kind of learn from one another. And it's always delightful when the Wonder Box is very noisy. So there is something noisy in here. Does anybody want to try and make a guess as to what might be in here today? Colorful tools. Valentine candy. What was that? Crayons? Potatoes. Oh, Legos. I like potatoes too. All right, are we going to open it up? Let's see. I've got a wooden, it's a moon, right? Then it goes like this. And then we've got some pieces. Ooh, this might be tricky. What do you think this is? What kind of toy might this be? Oh, that's serious. A developmental toy. Yes, it's a balancing toy. That's what I wanted for you all to see. And we're going to take this to our little house where we have a time for kids to be together, and there's toys in there. But let's see what our story might have to do with a toy like this. I'll try and make that connection.
I Am Enough by Grace Byers, pictures by Keturah A. Bogo, published by HarperCollins. Like the sun, I'm here to shine. Like the voice, I'm here to sing. Like the bird, I'm here to fly and soar high over everything. Like the trees, I'm here to grow. Like the mountains, here to stand. Like time, I'm here to be and be everything I can. Like the champ, I'm here to fight. Like the heart, I'm here to love. Like a ladder, here to climb, and like the air, to rise above. Like the wind, I'm here to push. Like a rope, I'm here to pull. Like the rain, I'm here to pour and drip and fall until I'm full. Like the moon, I'm here to dream. Like the student, here to learn. Like the water, here to swell. Like the fire, here to burn. Like the winner, I'm here to win. And if I don't, get up again. I know that I may sometimes cry, but even then, I'm here to try. I'm not meant to be like you. You're not meant to be like me. Sometimes we will get along, and sometimes we will disagree. I know that we don't look the same, our skin, our eyes, our hair, our frame. But that does not dictate our worth. We both have places here on earth. And in the end, we are right here to live a life of love, not fear. To help each other when it's tough, to say together, I am enough. The end.
There was fighting in there. It's like we fight for justice, don't we? We have times when we fight for the things that are important. So we have so many demands in life that we place on ourselves, that society places on us. No matter what, we are each enough. To get back to that toy in the Wonder Box, it is a balance. We have hopes and dreams, and we work hard. But even before all of that, we are enough. And as our Unitarian Universalist values reflect, we each have our inherent dignity and worthiness. I'm sure Eric is going to have much more to say about this, and we will talk more about it in our time together too. And if we have a few young ones with us today, they can stay here, or we can go out together to the back, but Jean will play us out.
Good morning. I was researching my last sermon. I came across a quote from Dr. King about the assassination of President Kennedy, and I felt called to wrestle the following question. Can we imagine a future without violence? I also want to make sure that I'm being clear. I'm not asking if such a future is possible or plausible or what changes have to happen to bring it about. I'm asking a question about the present, a question about our own social and mental and emotional and spiritual state. I'm asking if we can, through the lens of our imagination, see such a place from here. Can we imagine a future without violence. And now you know you're in trouble because I'm walking towards you and I have a mic in my hand. If you're having thoughts about this question and you're feeling brave this morning, I'd like to hear them, and I think that your fellow congregants would as well.
I believe we can live in a world without violence, but it takes everybody as a collective to be less violent. You don't always got to be upset. When you're driving down the road, just because the person in front of you, you don't got to, driving slow, you don't got to get all crazy and beating on the steering wheel thinking about killing the 80-year-old in front of you that's driving slow. I'm not just saying, oh, people, but, being safe. But I grew up in a place where there's extreme violence. I did 29 years in prison, and I can tell you there's extreme violence in the world. It's not only from, it's everywhere. And I've learned when you live around other people, you got to be patient. You got to take everybody into consideration. You can't mistreat people. You can't be a bully. And you can't allow it to go on. That don't mean you got to use violence to stop violence. Sometimes it's just hey, not here. Take that on over there. But I really believe that violence can be stopped.
Thank you. Thank you. Amen.
Hi, my name is Billy, and my immediate thought was that nonviolence is what we all long for. It's what's really in our hearts, and we grieve every day when we read about all the violence or maybe experience violence that's going on in our world. So it's a longing.
Love that. It's a longing. Other people would like to share? Oh, I'm going to get over there too.
No.
That's a fair and succinct statement. I saw other hands. Yes, Joe.
We're going to worship violence this afternoon at the Super Bowl. So I'm not
That is an excellent point, Joe. If you think it was a mistake that I brought you this question on Super Bowl Sunday, you would be mistaken.
But you do have on a red tie.
I wore my red power tie. It's true. It's true. I'm celebrating the bloodlust. Oh, that's terrible. I got a hand back here. You can stay there. I'll come to you.
So, Eric, when you asked us, could we imagine a world without violence? Molly, I agree with you now. But I went to, what would that world be like? So first I think of my grandson who's going to be entering high school next year, and I'm already worried that he's going to be bullied because he is not a strong football player type personality. And how will he handle that? Why do teenagers say the things that they do to one another? So I'm trying to imagine a world where, yes, as Vanessa said, we can have our differences, but we don't have to be cruel to one another, hurt one another. Can I imagine a world where we don't violently hurt or assault or arrest somebody because their skin color is different? We are striving to make that happen in our world, trying to change what would a world look like if we accepted people who have disabilities or who have mental health issues. Can we look at those people with open eyes, with compassionate hearts? That's the world I imagine, and that's the world I know I don't live in, but that's what drives me to do the things I do for justice.
Thank you.
My name is Mimi, and this last week I just read an article about how to influence people and how to, to influence people. And the long and short of it was that violent demonstrations and violent actions have just the opposite effect of influencing people to your way of thinking. It makes people want to be violent back. And so I've been thinking about that, and I thought about the civil rights movement and the way Dr. King worked. And it took way too long, and you thought, this can't work, nothing can happen. But it did work. It worked way better than any of the violent reactions against it.
Thank you, Mimi. I think I got time for one more. Got one more hand? Oh, here we got one over here. Thank you.
Thank you. My name is Kit, and when I think about the sacrifices of people like Gandhi, King, Nichiren Daishonin, to have the willingness to basically put your life on the line, being able to give your life, those people have it going on. And the rest of us, you know, it's an open question. How do we go between from where we are now, or violence, and that, which for some is an ideal. It's an open question. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you all. I had a feeling that I was not alone in struggling with this question, but I didn't want me to assume that, and more importantly, I didn't want you to assume that. I've got a hypothesis about it. We'll get around to it. Let's begin by listening again to the words from Dr. King that called me to do this sermon. Quote, "Our nation should do a great deal of soul-searching as a result of President Kennedy's assassination. The shot that came from the fifth-story building cannot be easily dismissed as the isolated act of a madman. Honesty impels us to look beyond the demented mind that executed this dastardly act, while the question, who killed President Kennedy, is important. The question, what killed him, is more important. Our late president was assassinated by a morally inclement climate. It is a climate filled with heavy torrents of false accusation, jostling winds of hatred, and raging storms of violence. It is a climate where men cannot disagree without being disagreeable, where they express dissent through violence and murder. It is the same climate that murdered Medgar Evers in Mississippi and 6 innocent Negro children in Birmingham, Alabama. So, in a sense, we are all participants in that horrible act that tarnished the image of our nation. By our silence, by our willingness to compromise principle, by our constant attempt to cure the cancer of racial injustice with the vaseline of gradualism, by our readiness to allow arms to be purchased at will and fired at whim, by allowing our movie and television screens to teach our children that the hero is one who masters the art of shooting and the technique of killing. By allowing all these developments, we have created an atmosphere in which violence and hatred have become popular pastimes. So, President Kennedy has something important to say to each of us in his death. He has something to say to every politician who has fed his constituents the stale bread of racism and the spoiled meat of hatred. He has something to say to every clergyman who observed evils and remained silent behind the safe security of stained glass windows. He has something to say to the devotees of the extreme right who poured out venomous words against the Supreme Court and the United Nations and branded everyone a communist with whom they disagree. He has something to say to a misguided philosophy of communism that would teach man that the ends justify the means and that violence and the denial of basic freedom are justifiable methods to achieve the goal of a classless society. He says to all of us that this virus of hate that has seeped into the veins of our nation, if unchecked, will lead inevitably to our moral and spiritual doom. End quote. the virus of hate that has seeped into the veins of our nation. I get curious about that. For one thing, I think although he was speaking to an American audience, I don't think that it's constrained by those national boundaries. I also wonder, is hate the virus or is hate the symptom? For your contemplation, I offer this idea. Hate is a symptom of unmetabolized fear. Hate is a symptom of unmetabolized fear. All right, I have two things to admit. First is that I have an unrequited love affair with nonviolence. Now, in an era where it seems to me common for people to have no tattoos or lots of tattoos, I only have one. And I think that that shows up as either something quirky or obsessive. But I will tell you that the identity of my one tattoo, it's the word ahimsa in Sanskrit, which means the absence of harm or nonviolence. I wear it with me all the time. Now, I can't justify to you my use of the words unrequited love for nonviolence. I can't explain to you why they make sense, but I can only be honest with you that that's how it feels. It feels like my love affair with nonviolence is a bit unrequited. So I keep it with me always, and I wear it under my sleeve, safe from prying eyes most of the time. But it's a fact that's been with me for a long time. The second thing that I want to admit is that I am at least a medium-sized Star Trek nerd. Now, when I say medium-sized, I think what I mean is I've never done cosplay or been to a convention, but I have owned exhaustive encyclopedias of Star Trek lore and knowledge. So I'm going to qualify that as a medium-sized Star Trek nerd. When I was out with some friends at a book group earlier in the week, I did make the mistake of saying Star Wars instead of Star Trek, which immediately lost me major credibility that I had to spend hours rebuilding. But, you know, I think that my love for this question of can we imagine a future without violence, I think there are a lot of directions we could go with it. I think first we could get seriously philosophically analytical about it and say, well, first I think we have to define violence. What do you mean by violence? Yeah, okay, we could go that route. We're not going to today, but we could do that. I think it's worth exploring. I think as our cultural reactions to the Me Too movement and the Black Lives Matter movement suggest, probably the most important way in which we mean that question has something to do with structure. We're not asking, I don't think, for a world where nothing bad ever happens, where there aren't incidents of badness. I don't think any of us, when I hear no, one of the things I hear no to is the idea that that's like saying there's like a world without car crashes where we still drive cars, right? Like there's a certain inconsistency there about, you know, our expectations about who and what we are in the universe. But for me, the more meaningful or the deeper version of the question that I want to struggle with is it possible for us to create a world together where violence and exploitation are not the norm, where they're not normalized and institutionalized and made into the default? I think, so this is the question I'm going to try and struggle with today. I just wanted to sit down first and try this thing. I don't know. Does this feel more intimate to everybody else? It feels weird to me. I like it though. All right, I'm going to put this back away. I'm going to talk some more. I'm going to read other stuff that I wrote. So when Gene Roddenberry wrote the original Star Trek and struggled with this question, he gave an answer to it that I find confusing and perplexing and at least a little frustrating, given my own unrequited love affair with nonviolence. You see, he envisioned Star Trek as a human society that had disavowed internal violence and exploitation, and that was amazing to me, but it was always struck me oddly that the whole structure of this future was militarized. That although violence was only used as a last resort due to the prime directive, and the people, the humans in the stories, steadfastly refused to initiate violence or violent engagements regardless of the provocation. And those were big steps forward, even given the time frame of the 1960s, riding as they were on the coattails of World War II. But it always struck me as odd, this weird presumption of external threats. The presumption that other species and civilizations, you thought I was joking when I said we were going to get to the alien invasion later. You thought I was not joking. The presumption that other species and civilizations who had progressed enough for interstellar travel would not have also outgrown the use of violence. I found that confusing. But like I said, I have an unrequited love affair with nonviolence. And maybe for others, the idea that violence is something you get over or get past seems just as incomprehensible, just as fanciful. Maybe. But the broad cultural influence of Star Trek and other parallel cultural developments were clear. Take, for example, this relatively famous quote from Ronald Reagan's address to the UN General Assembly on September 21st, 1987. "Cannot swords be turned into plowshares? Can we and all nations not live in peace? In our obsession with antagonisms of the moment, we often forget how much unites all the members of humanity. Perhaps we need some outside universal threat to make us recognize this common bond. I occasionally think how quickly our differences worldwide would vanish if we were facing an alien threat from outside this world. And yet I ask you, is not an alien force already among us? What could be more alien to the universal aspirations of our peoples than war and the threat of war?" Now, some of you probably didn't hear what I just read. Some of you were probably very busy trying to process the implications of me quoting Ronald Reagan in a sermon from a UU pulpit in a positive light. Well, that wasn't an accident either. I suggested earlier that hate is a symptom of unmetabolized fear. So if you reacted to Ronald Reagan in that way, in such a way that you couldn't hear the same longing for peace in his heart that is in your own, then I ask you, what fears have you left in your chest unmetabolized? Are those fears preventing you from imagining a future without violence? Now look, if you had asked me last month if I'd be quoting Ronald Reagan in a positive light in my MLK Day follow-up speech, I would have laughed out loud. But I did, and I mean it. We may think differently. We may have been through different life experiences, different traumas, but the worlds we dream of are the same. The worlds we dream of are the same. For those who missed it the first time, in the words of Ronald Reagan, what could be more alien to the universal aspirations of our peoples than war and the threat of war? Now, because this topic is something that's been on my heart for a long time, and because, as they say, this is like I am David wrestling my own angel. I have had to struggle not to turn this sermon into an overly revelatory process sermon about what I did to get here today. But I did read a few books, and I wanted to share them with you. I read Nonviolence, 25 Lessons from the History of a Dangerous Idea by Martin Kurlansky, and The Better Angels of Our Nature, Why Violence Has Declined by Steven Pinker, and Doppelganger by Naomi Klein, and Stamped from the Beginning, The Definitive History of Racist Ideas in America by Ibram X. Kendi. But since I saw you last, it was also my son Simon's 15th birthday, which means two things. One, I had a chauffeur this morning so I could reread my sermon on the drive here from Austin. That was really awesome. Number two, it means that he got to pick his birthday movie, and he asked that we rewatch the 2002 movie Hero, directed, co-written, and produced by Zhang Yimou, and starring Jet Li, Tony Leung Chiu Wei, Maggie Chung, Zhang Ziya, Donnie Yen, and Chang Daoming. And I'm sure I massacred some of those names, but I repeated them all out of respect for an amazing film. The historical background of the film refers to the Warring States period in ancient China, when China was divided into 7 states. And in 227 to 221 BC, the Qin state was working to unify the other 6 states, and assassins from these other 6 states, of course, were trying to assassinate the king to stop him from carrying out this unification. So despite all of my heavy reading, we're going to finish today with inspiration from the movie. Because the universe finds ways to get us the message we need, regardless of where we go looking in the wrong place. So when the assassin, played by Jet Li, finally confronts the aspiring Qin emperor, whose aspirations to unite China have literally been soaked in the blood of his enemies, he presents the emperor with a scroll from a master swordsman and calligrapher named Broken Sword. And the emperor, while waiting for his now unavoidable death, turns his back on the assassin and contemplates the scroll, saying aloud, "This scroll of broken swords isn't about sword technique, but about swordsmanship's ultimate ideal. Swordsmanship's first achievement is the unity of man and sword. Once this unity is attained, even a blade of grass can be a weapon. The second achievement is when the sword exists in one's heart, when absent from one's hand. One can strike an enemy at 100 paces, even with bare hands. Swordsmanship's ultimate achievement is the absence of the sword in both hand and heart." Forgot I was double-mic'd. The swordsman is at peace with the rest of the world. He vows not to kill and to bring peace to mankind. Upon hearing this, the assassin, whose heart had been filled only with a desire for revenge for his murdered family, understands the 2 words left for him by Broken Sword. Tianxia. In the movie, this is translated variously as our land or all under heaven, a phrase you've probably heard. Its transliteration is land under sky. Is that not an apt description of our biosphere, of our Mother Earth? Is it not the same idea of unity and of oneness that inspires us to call ourselves Unitarian Universalist? The assassin understands in that moment that a future without violence can only be imagined in the moment when one chooses to break the cycle of violence. he returns the emperor's sword and implores him to hold this ultimate achievement of peace in his heart. He then turns and calmly walks from the hall to face his own execution. Tianxia. I have struggled with the karmic truth that one must walk the path of peace to arrive in a place called peace. But ours is a martial and militarized and violent past. So there must be, if we are to imagine a future without violence, a moment where we lay aside the sword. And that means metabolizing the fear that led us to take up the sword in the first place. So we're going to do joys and sorrows like we did last time I was here. Kelly's going to bring the mic around. We're going to call it Joys, Sorrows, and Reflections. If something was on your heart when you got here today that you want to share, we want to hear it. If something is in your heart because of what we just talked about, even if that thing is anger at me, I want to hear it. So raise a hand and Kelly will bring you the mic. I love when the saints go marching in. So let's have that as our hymn. Please rise in body and spirit as you're able. When the saints go marching in, oh, when the saints go marching in, oh, I want to be in that number. When the saints go marching in, oh, when the new world is revealed, oh, when the new world is revealed, oh, I want to be in that number. When the saints go marching in, oh, when the saints go marching in, oh, when the saints go marching in, oh, I want to be in that number when the saints go marching in. Thank you, Jean. All right. As we close our sacred time together, we extinguish our chalice. Uh-oh. I skipped the offering? Oh, that's not okay. Thank you, Kelly. She'll keep me honest.
Well, I had to tell him because I wanted to get up here and make my little Super Bowl comment, which is that I was really jealous of those Go Taylor Swift's Boyfriends team sweatshirts because that was the only time I've ever been able to relate to football in my life. So the offering, we take an offering each week to sustain this space that we call home and to support the work of our fellowship. If this is your first time here, please feel free to let the basket pass you by. Your presence this morning is a wonderful gift in and of itself. Thank you for coming. If you filled out our visitor card, you can put that into the basket. For our offering music, Jean is going to be bringing us The Hem of Promise, potentially up-tempo, by Natalie Sleeth. The offering will now be gratefully received, and we thank you.
My impatience to light the chalice has now been rewarded. When I was a young man and I heard that the saints were marching in, it was a martial song. The saints had swords and armor. They looked like crusaders. And in my naivete, that was a good thing. As an elder, that vision isn't heroic anymore. Costumes of war festooned with religious imagery strikes me as a blasphemy. An image of crusaders appear as colonizers, as thieves of human bodies and stealers of others' lands. And neither of those are good things. So I ask when I find myself still resonantly singing along, what are the saints wearing? Most noticeably, the saints wear smiles. Some joyful, some weary, some sad, but smiles nonetheless. And what are they holding in their hands? The saints come mostly empty-handed. But their hands are outstretched, palms up, the better to grasp yours as they come to meet you, as they come to welcome you to the host. Those who are carrying, they're packing water skins, food, medicine, and instruments for making beautiful music. Go in peace. I broke the rules. Oh, yeah, go ahead.
Thank you again, Eric, for being with us today. Don't forget to check your Sunday handout for important announcements. And as I mentioned before the start of service, please join us for coffee and conversation. And if anyone has a few extra minutes today that would like to help with cleanup, we're always welcome of that.